Welcome to Skill Session. Today we're going to talk about APIs. We're going to talk about the open ones that you can use for free without any form of authorization. We're going to talk about API keys, about Basic Auth, about oAuth or other authorization, and how it all fits together. We're going to try it out using PHP right here locally on our own computer. Let's just get straight into it. Now, let me preface this by saying this is of course just an example. First of all, you always need to consult the documentation of the APIs that you want to use, because oAuth especially can be set up in a number of different ways. The other disclaimer that I need to make is that this is for educational purposes. We're skipping a lot of security measures along the way in order to understand the concept a little bit better. So bear with me as I skip a bunch of security and teach you about the other parts. Now let's get going. Now first let's talk about open APIs. We simply have a site that wants to connect to a service. So in this case, we'll say that we have a monkey site that wants to connect to a monkey service. Let's build that. So what I have on my screen here is a couple of different things. I obviously have an open browser window so we can look at a page and see what's going on. We can see the stuff that we output from our PHP scripts. I also have 3 different PHP instances open in the same folder. And the reason for that is if I want to call an API that's running on the same server, PHP is actually going to look for the text inside of the script rather than interpreting it through the PHP server. So if I have an API and another script that wants to consume that API, that needs to happen on 2 different ports. They can be in the same folder, but one of them needs to run from one port and call the service on another port. So first, we're going to create a free banana API. We want some free bananas, right? We need to set a header to say that this is going to be JSON. So we'll say content type application JSON, and then we'll need to return something. So let's make some bananas in an array, and bananas, let's put some bananas in the banana array. Bananas equals, we'll just give it a random number. That way we can see that it's a new API call every time we hit refresh. And so we'll take these bananas and turn them into JSON bananas by using JSON encode bananas, and then we'll echo that. Echo JSON bananas. There we go. So if we save this, and we should be able to go into our localhost 8080 free banana API.php. Hit enter, and here we can see every time we refresh, we get a new number of bananas. Now, if we want it to look in a way that's easier for us to read as humans, then we can do something called JSON pretty print. So we can just add that as a parameter up here, and when we refresh, it's going to format it in a prettier way so it's easier for us to get an overview of the content. So that's one way to make your APIs a little bit easier to read. So now we have an API that's running, but we want to consume that API. We want to use this API from another system. We want to create the monkey system that consumes the bananas. So we'll create a new file and we'll call it freebananaeater.php. And what we'll do in here is, let's just give it a header, freebananaeater. And we'll jump into PHP and we'll set the URL for the API that we want to use. http://localhost:8080/freebananaAPI.php. Let me move this around. Here we go. So this is the API that we want to call. Now the simplest way to get something out from here is to simply say we get some data, and we get that by saying file get contents free banana API URL semicolon. This is actually enough to just get something out from it. Let's just echo that data so we can see that this works. So now down here in our browser, we'll want to go to the free banana eater, but you can see that we have a problem now. See, it actually just keeps on spinning. And the reason for that is we're trying to call an API on the same port that we're already working on. So we're trying to call the free banana API on port 8080 from the free banana eater that's also running on port 8080. Now, if this happens to you and it just keeps on spinning like this, you might need to restart your PHP instance. And you do that by jumping into the window, hitting Ctrl+C. And if that doesn't work, you might need to force shut the window. Now that we have all of our servers up and running again, we'll just simply change the port number here so that we're running on different ports. So here we're visiting it on port 8080 and the service is going to be on port 8081. So I'll hit enter here and we can see here it types out free banana eater and we're getting this data over from the free banana API. Now we can do one more thing, because right now we're just typing everything out as text and that's really not what we want when we're working with JSON. We want to to get it out as an object that we can work with. So I'll say here object equals JSON decode data. And then I'll write, I just got object bananas from an API using, and say object security. This is only going to work if we add something called security to our API, but we'll want to do that because we're going to work with that. So bananas security, and we'll just say none. So when we read this out, it's going to say, I just got 11 bananas. I just got 11 bananas from an API using none. Using none security. So I just got 14 bananas from an API using none security. So that's great. We can now reach an API and we can work with the JSON data that we're getting back. I want to know who's calling me, right? So let's create a banana service that requires an API key. So I'll take this API here and I'll just duplicate it and I'll rename it to banana API key. Now, in order to work with an API key, we need something in a database, right? So I'll create a little simple database that allows us to work with API keys. I have this script that I can use to work with my database. You can find that on my GitHub, link in the description below. And what I'll do here is I'll create a table called app, and in that I'm gonna assign an app ID, an app name, and an API key. So the next thing I want to do is I want to insert an app name and an API key into this table. So now if I say select star from app, I can see that I have an app in here called monkey site, and it's gotten an API key that's ABC, and it has the app ID 1. Now, I don't want this to be the same, my app ID and my app name, because the name could change, but I don't want the app ID to ever change. So always keep your data and your IDs separate. Now we have something in the database. Now obviously you'd need a registration form, we're skipping that. But now we have apps with API keys, so we can actually check that. So let's build the monkey site that uses the API key. So monkey site API key. .php. Now we want to consume something, so we could actually copy everything that we have from here and say we're building on this. So now we're saying that this is our monkey site API key user. So we'll need to use the banana API key URL, which is going to be banana API key. And then we're going to need a API key equals ABC semicolon, and we'll need to turn this into a full URL. So that's going to be banana API key URL. And I'll fix that spelling mistake. Dot, I'll have a string here, just question mark, API key equals, and I'll add the API key. That's inconsistent API key. All uppercase letters when it's a constant. So I'll hit save and say, now that I'm going to call this, I need this full URL. And over in my API, I'll want to check this API key. So all of this is only going to happen if I accept that API key. So let's say if is set get API key. We'll want to do something, has to do with this, and else we'll want to handle that as an error. Let's indent this and say now we want to check that this API key is actually real. So we'll need a database connection, and just because we're going to need this database connection in multiple scripts, I'll put it over into its own script so it's not taking up space every time that we need it. So I'll just create db.php, and in here I'll put my host, username, password, database name, and so on, so that I can connect to the database. So with that out of the way, we don't have to worry about creating connections. We'll just say acquire once db.php, and we have the connection now. So now that we have that, let's write some SQL. We'll say select star from app where app ID equals 1. Now the reason I'm using 1 is because normally you'd use the URL to say, well, if the call's coming in from this URL, then I'd expect this to be the API key. But since we're working on different ports on a local machine, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why I'm just accepting that this is always the case. So with that, we need to prepare the statement and run it. And I'm using PDO fetch associated so we don't get duplicate results. And I want to say if get API key is equal to the result API key, then we'll return this, same as we had before, but security is now API key. And so we'll say in the error messages here, because we actually want some kind of an error message, wrong API key and API key error. Let's just check the port number so we don't run into trouble again. So this is on port 8081. So if we called on port 8080, we shouldn't run into problems. So monkey site API key. And we can see now that we're getting 97 bananas from an API using API key security. That's great. So far, so good. And look, this is all it took. We just added question mark API key equals to, and then the API key to the URL. And accepting the API key is not that complicated either. I mean, most of this is just putting JSON together. So we're really just checking if If the API key is set in the get array, then we're connecting to the database to get the API key out and preparing if it's the same. Now you might want to use hashing or something, but we're keeping things simple right now. Next up is Basic Auth. And I'll do this in a different way. So we'll say this is the monkey site, but what about the monkeys themselves? I know, they'd have usernames and passwords. So the monkey is gonna get some bananas directly by using Basic Auth with a username and a password. So I'll create a banana basicauth.php. And we'll jump into PHP and we'll need the header to say that it's JSON. And if is set server array PHP auth user. That's where you'll find the username when you're using Basic Auth. I'll require my database, and let's write some SQL. Select star from monkey where username equals username. Well, we need to create a table with usernames and passwords for this. So let's jump over here and do that. Let's say create table monkey with a monkey ID, unsigned, auto increment, primary key, has a username that's not null, it has a password that's not null. Then I'll say insert into monkey, username and password, and I'll call the user Adam, and I'll set the password to mom because we all use mom as our password, right? And I'll say submit, and now I have a user with the ID 1, username Adam, and password mom. Now obviously you should never store your passwords as clear text in your database. You'd obviously want to hash your passwords and use proper security surrounding that. So with that, we can prepare the statement, we can bind the username that we found in our server array, and we can execute this statement. And if the result contains a password, and the password is the same as the password that we have in our server array under PHP auth password, then we'll want to return our bananas. We can just copy that from the script that we had before. There we go. And now the security is Basic Auth. And we can add a couple of else's here just to get a proper handling of errors. Basic Auth failed. So now that we have that, let's create a service that can actually use this, because we can't visit this directly from the browser. If we go in here and we say banana basic auth, then we're gonna get a warning, and it's gonna tell us that basic auth failed and all this kind of stuff. We don't want that. We need a service that can actually access this. So let's give the monkey access to the bananas. Monkey basic auth.php. Now we don't want to start from scratch. Let's copy the way that we already know how to use an API, right? So we had our free banana eater here. Let's copy that as a starting point and say here we have basic auth banana eater. Now we'll want to point to the banana API key on port 8081, banana API key. Now we'll want to point to the banana basic auth, banana basic auth on port 8081. And we'll need to use that URL down here when we say file get contents. But this is not going to work still, because we have to use our username and password. Now for this one, we're just gonna hard code the username and password. So username equals Adam, password equals mom. There we go, but we need a way to include this username and password. So what we'll do is we'll create a request in an array, and in that we'll say HTTP is an array. Inside that array, we'll have three different things. We'll have our header, we'll have our method, and we'll have our protocol version. Now our header is going to be an array again. Our method is going to be get. It could be post, depends on the API, but we're using get. Protocol version 1.1. And in the header array, we'll need a couple of things as well. So in here, we'll set two headers: content type, application JSON, and authorization. There it is, basic. Now, after the word basic, we'll want the actual username and password in a base64 encoding. Now, if you don't know what base64 encoding is, I made a different video explaining that in detail. So I'll add that here to say base64 encode. And what we'll need here is the username, then a colon and a password. So let's just insert the colon in the middle here. We'll need to add something before and after. And so here we have the username and the password. And let me just pop this on another line so you can see it. So authorization, basic, and then base64 encoded username and password separated by a colon. So if I hit save, I should be able to jump over into my browser here and say banana basic auth. No, I couldn't access that directly. So monkey, can you please access the bananas for me? Oh, there's an error. So I inserted the semicolon. What am I doing? Save, jump over here, enter. What's going on? Print R basic auth failed. So we need to package our request. So let's say context equals stream context underscore create parenthesis semicolon and then request, and that context we can add that here as a parameter when we say file get contents. So if I hit save now and I hit refresh over here, you can see I'm actually getting the JSON, comment that out, go back, hit refresh, and I just got 53 bananas from an API using Basic Auth security. How awesome is that? So now we got API keys working, we have Basic Auth working, and we get all of the things from the database. We're actually checking this with applications in the database, with users in the database, but we're running into problems. The banana service just decided they don't want to sell bananas directly to monkeys. They have to go through monkey side. But the monkey side has decided they don't want to create their own user accounts for all the monkeys. They already have user accounts with the banana provider. So they made a deal. If the monkey side can sell the bananas to the monkeys, then it can use the authorization system in the banana provider. So that means for a monkey, the monkey needs to buy their bananas from the monkey side by using the login service of the banana provider. That's what's called oAuth. You probably know it from services. Oh, do you want to just log in with Facebook? Do you want to log in with your Microsoft account? Do you want to log in with your Google account? Stuff like that. So it's just a way to use an account that you already have to log into a completely new service. You need to know how it works. So let's get started with that. And we're gonna take an approach here. Now there are different approaches because the idea is basically the monkey is going to tell the banana service, I'm gonna go visit the monkey site now, but I need to be authorized. This is my username and password. Could you provide me a token? And then it gets that token back, and then it goes over to the monkey site and says, I want to get access using the banana login. It gave me this token. And then that monkey site can go to the banana site and say, so this monkey is trying to log in. He wants to buy my bananas. He gave me this token. Can you just tell me, is this guy who he really says he is? And then they'll say, yeah, sure, I just gave him that token, that's real. Let's do this in practice. Now, first off, we need to update our database again, because now we'll need to connect applications with users, and we don't want to make a mess of what apps are using what tokens. So let's keep things straight. We'll jump in here and we'll create a simple relational table. So create table, app monkey ID, just like the other IDs, gets an app ID from the app table, it gets a monkey ID from the monkey table, and then it gets a token. And we're adding something here. We're not going to use it, but just for good measure. We're adding a token updated with a timestamp on it that's automatically updated whenever the token is updated. And in that way, I can add some additional security later on to say these are only valid for like 5 seconds. But I'll hit submit and I'll insert the monkey into the app and give it a token. So I'll just say here, insert into app monkey, the app ID and the monkey ID. They're both number 1 because there's no other apps and no other users, but this would work with any number. And the token. And I'm just giving it a token OPQ, but I'm actually going to overwrite that later on. So I'll hit submit, select star from app monkey, semicolon, submit. Now I can see that I have app 1 connected to monkey 1. It has the token OPQ, and this connection has this ID out here. And I'm going to use this ID, the app monkey ID, because this is what connects that user to that app. And I'm going to use the token as well. I'm not going to use this, but you can see how it could be useful later on. So with all of that out of the way, we need a way for the monkey to retrieve a token. And we're going to create some new files, but we're going to copy the ones that we already have because much of the functionality is actually going to be the same. So let's say that the monkey is going to use BasicAuth to retrieve their token. So let's just copy, paste this one and call it monkey oAuth. We have our oAuth banana eater here, and we're still going to do the same thing with BasicAuth just to get our token. So that's the first thing we're doing in here. And we might want to keep track of what exactly we're doing here. So let's do another header and say retrieving token. And so we'll want to call the banana oAuth service here, but there's going to be 2 different services. One for the consumers, for the monkeys, and another one for the monkey site or for the service providers. So banana oAuth monkey. So this is going to be the monkey service, and we're going to call that from here. And that also means that for the banana service, we can just copy this one and say, yeah, we're just looking at BasicAuth for now. And then we're going to add a couple of changes to that. Rename banana oAuth, hit enter. So now that we've tested that everything is accurate, that the username and the password is correct, then we'll want to create a token. So token equals unique ID, semicolon. That's going to create a random string. We'll need to put that down into the database. So let's do some SQL. SQL equals update app monkey set token equal to token, where monkey ID equal to monkey ID and app ID is equal to Well, we don't know the app ID, but we know the name of the app. Because remember, right now we're doing this for the monkeys, right? We want to provide a token for the monkey. So the monkey needs to tell us what service you're trying to log into, so we can create that common token. So the app ID is going to be whatever we get as an app name. Select app ID from app where app name is equal to app name. So we're gonna get the app ID from the app name, and we need to bind the parameters and everything. I'll just copy this right here. So we'll prepare the SQL and then we'll bind the parameters. But it's a couple of different parameters here. We have a token, we have a monkey ID, which is gonna be the username, and we have our app name. And we get our app name from the get array, an app name. So that means that if this is going to work, then the monkey side, oAuth, is going to need to add that to its URL. So up here, we'll just add question mark app name equals monkey side. So now that's going to turn up in the get array, and that part is going to work as well. Now we call this banana oAuth monkey, and we of course need to reflect that in the file name. So monkey, there we go. Let's just try it out. We might have forgotten something, but let's just try it out. Monkey oAuth 8, it's trying to read bananas, but it cannot. So monkey oAuth right here on line 27, it's not getting any bananas. We'll say print R, let's just do the data. Hit refresh, because now we're getting everything back from that other side, so we can get those error messages. Invalid date time format. So this is in banana oAuth monkey, line 28. Oh, but that's because the monkey ID is not the username. So we need to get that from the result. So we already have a result up here. We copied this from the other side, and up here we're saying select star from monkey. So we know everything about this monkey, including its monkey ID. So let's use that, jump over here, hit refresh, and now we can see that we know everything. And it says, I just got 96 bananas. We don't want to give you any bananas. No, we want to give you a token. You can go use that token with someone else. Token is going to be your token. Simple. And I know there's a bit of improper naming down here, but we might as well keep it consistent so you can see how much we're really reusing here. So we'll save this, and we'll jump over here, and we can see now that we're getting a token right here. And we can go over here and we can submit again, and we can see that this token is actually in the database. And if we call it again, the token is different, and the token is going to be different here in the database as well. So that part works. It generates a new token and it returns it to the user. Now we still have a couple of problems here. Monkey oAuth line 30 and 31, but that's fine because we don't have bananas or any of this stuff. This is for later. This is for when we actually get some bananas. Right now we have a token. We need to validate that token. Actually, let's print this out. Exit PHP h4, send token to monkey site, and we'll jump back into PHP. Jump over here, refresh, we have the token. There's a spelling error and that bothers me. Remove it, and now we have the token completely clean. And monkey oAuth, we can look at that token directly. Object, token, go. If we hit refresh, we can see that we indeed have access to that token. Now that we have a token, we can actually do another basic auth call, because we can just replace our username with the ID out here, because this is going to be a unique ID that the three of us know. So that can be my username and this can be my password. So I can just go up here and copy this request. So I'll copy this, and of course I'm gonna need a URL, but I'm not gonna need a username and password anymore. So let's start with the URL. We're gonna say monkey site oAuth URL, and that's gonna be monkey site oAuth PHP, and that's all. And that's gonna be the URL that we visit. For the password, we'll take the object token, and for the username, object arrow app monkey ID. That wasn't included. You can see that here. There's only a token. So let's go ahead and include that. Copy this line, app monkey ID. Now this doesn't exist yet, but we'll just go ahead and get it from the database. Let's just copy all of this as a starting point, and then say select app monkey. We don't need to set a token or anything. Select star from app monkey, where monkey ID is this and app ID is this. We select it from the app name, and we then have to bind the app name and the monkey ID, but we don't have to add the token because we already have that. We can now get a result from this because this is a select statement. We can't get a result from an update. So we'll just copy this line to get a result down here, insert it, and now we have a result. And from that result, we can get monkey ID. If I hit save, we should be able to jump over here and hit refresh, and we can see now we have both our token and our app monkey ID. Then we can use that as a username and a password. So monkey site oAuth, here we go. We're working down here with our object app monkey ID as a username and the object token as a password. Now, one thing we want to do here is we want to echo the data so we can see the error messages that are coming from that other service, because right now we're working through different kinds of services, right? So I'll hit refresh back here, and we have a warning. Now, we're also doing something dangerous. Remember earlier in the video where we actually crashed the services by trying to call a service on the same port? Right now we're working with 3 different services, and we should make sure that we call them on separate ports. So we're working with the monkey on port 8080. So obviously nothing else goes on there, but the monkey site and the banana are two different applications that need to work on one port each. So let's say that we actually use the monkey down here on port 8082. Then we have the monkey site on port 8081, and we'll use the banana service on port 8080. So now whenever it says banana, we want it to say port 8080 first. And we're doing this to avoid having the monkey site and the banana service on the same port, or any of them on the same port as us. So banana, port 8080. And if we go up here, this one is not looking at any URLs right now. And this one is looking at the banana API key, port 8080. Right, so we have this now, and we can hit refresh. And this should mean now we're actually sending this to the monkey side, and we should be able to retrieve this information. But of course, this script doesn't exist yet. So monkey site, oAuth, let's create that. Now, we are just receiving something using BasicAuth. So I'm gonna copy the banana BasicAuth because that's already a service that receives something using BasicAuth. So copy this, paste, rename, monkey site, oAuth. And this is not going to require any form of database or anything because we don't know what the username and password is, and we don't wanna know what the username and password is. So everything that has to do with the database, we can just simply remove that. And all that we're really looking at here is whether or not we have this username and this password, right? So this came from the database. We'll remove that as well. And we can move all of this. Down here, we can say that anything goes wrong here, that's oAuth that failed. And right now, we're actually just checking if we're even attempting to use BasicAuth. BasicAuth in oAuth, that failed. Once this is set up, we can use the information. Oh, sorry about that. We'll remove this as well. And you can see we actually have a very, very simple setup right here. We're just checking if something exists, right? So what we're doing here is we're relaying something. So we have some information now. We have the token, we have the app monkey ID. That means we don't know the monkey ID. We just know the service of our own connection to it. So that means that a different app would get a different ID for that monkey. So we have the app monkey ID equal to PHP auth user in the server array. Let's copy that. And then we have the token equal to auth user password. But we also have something else, because this is the monkey site, and the monkey site has an API, or we can use that API key when we're accessing the oAuth service of the banana service. So let's jump up here and let's copy this API key, and let's just use that API key. And of course, we need a URL. We need to know where to put all of this, right? So let's do this with the API key, just like we did before. And then of course we need to alter it. And from now on, we said we were going to use port 8080 for the banana service. And we have oAuth, but we don't want to use oAuth monkey. That was the part for the monkey itself to retrieve the token. We have another one for services. So we're going to call that oAuth app. Now when we call that, we're going to give it the API key as a get parameter. And now we need to create a request that actually does this. So let's comment this out just to make it visible that this is not something we're using right now. Because what we're doing now is we're making a combination of an API key request and a BasicAuth request. So easiest way to look at that is to just take that BasicAuth request that we did down here and copy it. Now we're not going to take the username and the password because we actually don't know that. But we are going to take this part where we create the request, we turn it into a context, and we use file get contents, right? So let's plop that in here and then say that the username, well, we'll just relay that from what we got as a username. And the password, we'll just relay that as well. So that's actually the token. But since we're setting that up here, maybe it's going to be easier to read if we just say token and if we just say app monkey ID, because that's what it is. Then of course we need to use the full URL, paste, save, and go over here and hit refresh. What's happening now is banana oAuth app, that actually doesn't exist. So that's the big problem here. And this, once again, takes an approach that both looks at the API key and uses BasicAuth. So I'll make a copy of BasicAuth here because that's the most complex of them, and we need both functionalities. So copy, paste, rename oAuth app. So this is the one we're going to reach then, and we need to check that there is both a user trying to use oAuth, but we also need to check that there is a API key. So we'll save this, and if any of this happens, then we're going to go down here and let's see. First, we're looking for a monkey with a username. Well, that's not really the case. We're actually only interested in the app monkey table, where the app monkey ID is the app monkey ID, and then drag it out, app monkey ID. That's going to be the username from the BasicAuth username password set. So that's what we're saying here. Let's get that result out. And then we'll want to check the password, right? We're not checking a password, we're checking a token. So let's check if that token is set. Then let's check if that token is equal to the one that we got from the PHP authorization. If it is, then we'll want to return some bananas and tell them, well, you just used oAuth. But we do need to check one more thing, because right now we're only checking the username and the password. We're not actually checking if the API key is correct. But we did that up here. So let's do that. We can actually see this is the complete part that's using that. So let's go down here, oAuth for apps. Let's just do that first. Say select star from app where the app ID is 1. Once again, we would get that from the URL or something, which we can't do locally. And statement equals connection prepare SQL and execute. So we're getting the result here just to get the app information to get their API key. And if the API key from the GET request is equal to the one from the result we just got from the database, great, then we want to do something more. So let's finish that one down here, and then we can get another error message here. Say copy this, paste it here. And we say this is going to be when we have a wrong API key in oAuth. And this is going to be when we have a wrong app monkey ID or token in oAuth. So we'll hit save and we'll go ahead and jump here and hit refresh. And now we're sending Toki to the monkey side, but we can't really see what else is going on. So let's jump over in here and make sure we're actually writing out what's going on. So echo data, hit refresh, and there's an issue. And that's just because we haven't finished this one. Let's see, let's give this another line to work with. So we have prevent this too much. And we can see here now that we actually are getting something returned here from oAuth. So let's jump back and say right now the monkey side is very proud. It's saying all of these things, but it should actually just return these things. Well, it is actually returning these things by echoing. So it doesn't have to convert that from JSON into objects and then back into JSON. We can just go directly back to the monkey oAuth down here and say this line right here that we had to begin with, save, and let's hit refresh. I just got 42 bananas from an API using oAuth security. And we can of course remove this echo data that we have a couple of times. Remove that. Then we can see here that we're retrieving the token, and then we're sending the token. We can see what it is. We shouldn't, but we can. And that we just got 16 bananas from an API using oAuth security. So there it is. We started out by just connecting the application to our service using an API key. It can talk to us now and we know who they are. Then we connected the user using their username and password. And as a way to work with that through an API, we used basic authorization. Then, in order to connect everything with an oAuth service where one service can log us in using a username and a password from another service without knowing anything about that user, not their ID, not their name, not their username, not their password, nothing, we can still connect them. And we can connect everything with a service that don't know the user. So that's the power of oAuth. Now, I'll put this code on GitHub so you can try and work with it and see for yourself how it works. But do keep in mind, oAuth services are all different. And oAuth services are often used as SSO services or single sign-on services. And each of these work differently. You know, some of them you need to use the token within 5 seconds. Others you can use it within a day. Sometimes you need to provide certain things as headers. Sometimes you need to provide certain things in the body of your request. That's it for today's skill session. See you later.